Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the OHM Podcast. Now, this week I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Valentin, a growth consultant mainly focused on the financial side of the business and focusing on pulling growth levers there. Now, he also works in the eCom space, and it is an interesting one because from my experience, especially on the brands that we work with, a lot of those are, founder-led and CEOs go from ordinary people to running 7 or 8 figure business almost overnight, and that can be daunting. And that's where Valentin comes in. So he helps those business owners get on top of growth levers like finance, operations, understanding their numbers, and then providing insights based off the back of that. So Valentin, welcome. It's great to have you here. How are you?
Appreciate it, Jordan. What a nice intro. I couldn't have put it better. I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Yeah, all good. So just for the guest, can you kind of jump into it and I guess explain from your perspective what you do in case I butchered that?
Right. I think the best way to put it is my goal is to come in and create order out of chaos because there's so much going on in any business, especially D2C brands led by founders with not much, background in finance and operations. So there's a lot of data coming in from different angles and they become overwhelmed with all that data. And they have to make critical strategic decisions using that data. And when they don't have time to sit down and properly go through it, let alone understand what's happening from so many different sources and angles, someone has to come in and really help them remove all the noise, structure it in a way that is clear and actually helps derive strategic insights that will make more money and result in better financial outcomes. So that's how I would say my main sort of goal and purpose is with businesses.
Okay. And are there specific parts of that business that you're looking at when you're making these decisions and providing this insight?
I would say I look at everything. I look at operations, I look at marketing, I look at finance, I look at data. All of them come together in my analysis. And that's why, even though I say that I'm a fractional CFO, I typically help with growth advisory. And I come in and look at all the potential angles that could inhibit growth or could fuel growth further and basically help businesses manage their limited resources in a way that results in the highest return possible in the shortest amount of time.
Okay. And now you've just touched on the kind of financial aspect there. I was wondering if you could go a bit deeper into that. So you're mainly working with 7 and 8 figure brands, right? So I guess my first question is, they're making millions of dollars, maybe tens of millions of dollars. Why are they coming to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's define what making millions of dollars is. Is it revenue? Is it profit? Or is it cash?
They're often different, right? So I think for that question, they're doing top line revenue in that range, right? Why are they coming to you?
Yeah. So I would say if the business is doing millions of dollars in revenue, it doesn't guarantee that they have cash in the bank account. And that's what typically is the issue for a lot of 7-figure brands who want to break into 8 figures but can't because they have decent revenue, let's say 9 million, 8 million, upper 7-figure revenue figures, but they just can't get past that point. And the main block or the main hurdle for that is actually cash flow management, also known as working capital management. And when I speak to founders and identify that there is some sort of hurdle on the growth trajectory, I help them by understanding their current situation, the financial performance. I look at their profitability, I look at their cash conversion cycles, and then come in with this clear mind and clear analysis to help them understand where their bottlenecks in the business are so that they can fix those bottlenecks on the way to more growth. And so if the business has, to answer your question directly, if the business has no cash in the bank account, it could be for many different reasons. Primarily, it's because of profitability. So they're not as profitable as they'd like to be, or there's issues with the more working capital management side. So I would come in and simplify the causes behind the issues for profitability and cash conversion cycle, and then roll out a roadmap for them to fix the bottlenecks before they start investing more money in growth.
Okay. And you talked there about kind of issues and bottlenecks. Are there maybe some common ones that you see across brands in the space?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest one, like I said, is the poor working capital management or cash conversion cycle. And again, the reason for that is because there's some sort of gap between the data and action, right? So working capital is essentially uh, a financial term that includes inventory management, that includes payables management, that includes receivables and profitability to some extent, right? Because you got to be profitable to generate cash internally that could be invested in your inventory and other initiatives like marketing, for example. So when we look at the working capital management, we got to have the right tools, the right information to start with before we even start looking at the analysis. And most brands lack inventory management systems. They lack processes and procedures and protocols to control inventory better, to control their payables. And as a result, that creates a huge gap in their cash conversion cycle. So they pay out too early, too much, and they don't flip their inventory fast enough, and they build up the overstock. And as a result, that creates that gap that needs to be financed internally. And that's where most issues arise. And I would say that poor working capital management sits at the sort of cornerstone of why so many brands get stuck at seven figures, cannot escape that area and break into eight figures. And again, the reason for that is because they lack the basic foundation for inventory management, for data analysis, for procedures, for protocols. The other thing I would add is the lack of incremental profit testing, which leads to optimization on the net profit margin or contribution margin side. So basically, things like discount testing, right? A lot of brands take their discounting for granted. They just set a discount and run with it. Why don't you just experiment and play with a discount, right? Do some sort of A/B testing on the retail price side to see how much sensitivity is there from your consumers towards a specific product line or specific promo or specific sale. So all of that testing can lead to incremental profit rises or incremental increases in the uplifts. And the more you do of those things, the more profit contribution dollars you will ultimately generate. And I see a lot of brands just overlook it, ignore it. And again, it comes down to the knowledge of unit economics and understanding of the basics of of finance management and the basic financial analyses and insights. So I would say that, investing in your upskilling and education could be that breakout for you to make more money in terms of incremental profit. And the third thing I would say is the lack of differential analysis, which leads to overblown OPEX. So I see a lot of businesses, again, take it for granted and just say, look, we need this person on the team. We don't really track the value that they contribute to our processes, to our day-to-day operations. We just need them. And the thing is, in order for you to make money, you got to be as efficient and as lean as possible as a D2C business. Because if you build your business the same way you would a corporation or a Nike, for example, you will run out of money at some point. Because again, cost of marketing is just so much higher for a D2C brand now that you have to find efficiencies elsewhere. And without the differential analysis, which is typically, we are going to increase our OPEX, we're going to hire someone else. What is the type of revenue uplift or profit contribution uplift that we need to generate to cover that person's monthly cost or monthly expense, right? If you don't understand how much extra incremental profit you need to drive to cover that investment in OPEX or investment in a new person, you won't really hit your profit targets and you will end up overblowing your OPEX and then wonder why you have no cash in the bank account. So I would say those three would be the main reasons or the main overarching issues that I see with D2C brands.
Okay. And you touched on it briefly there, but from an organizational or operational perspective, are there common issues that you see when you kind of come into some of these businesses?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the two biggest buckets would be salaries and wages or personnel costs, bundled with contractors and agencies. Just hiring too many people to manage people who manage people who manage people. And I've seen someone say that. It's actually one of my clients who had an issue last year. They overhired, they had managers managing managers, right? So it gets overly complicated for no reason. And just understanding what specific purpose or specific function that each individual team member or personnel fulfills is the first step in the right direction. And it's easy to say, yes, we need this person. You should ask yourself instead, why would we not need this person, for example, right? It opens up the conversation in a different direction, which leads to better answers than just making a statement that, yes, we need this person. And then another thing that is always blown out of proportion is cloud tools and software. I see businesses spend, upper five figures sometimes on cloud tools, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, you're an $8 million brand who has an ERP system like Oracle or NetSuite managing your operations, when all you need to know is, how much product we have in overstock and how can we flip it more efficiently, right? You don't have to pay thousands of dollars a month to gain these types of insights and become a better operator. So understanding the why and how you can make the cloud tools more actionable is absolutely part of the lean OPEX management. So I would say cloud tools and personnel would be the biggest buckets that are mismanaged for a lot of brands.
Okay. And all of these kind of issues on the finance and the ops side, are they similar for 7 and 8 figure brands, or are they different based on size?
Yes, they are definitely similar, a lot of similarities. And the reason why it's so much more challenging for 7-figure brands to break into 8 figures is because they actually don't have the margin for error, right? They can't make a bad bet because the impact of that bet could be so much more significant than an 8-figure brand. Even though they're making the exact same mistakes, right? You will see overhiring, over stacking with technology with 8-figure brands as well, even more so, I would say. But it's just they can afford that because they're, to some extent too big to fail. That's what they believe. And that's what a lot of creditors believe as well. That's why they can easily gain access to more capital whenever they need, just because they have so much more revenue and some sort of brand presence existing, even though, you could argue that anything below 50 million is not really a brand. It's just a good business that, some sort of product market fit, but not exactly a brand. So yes, I would say that the issues are similar, just to different extent and different ways to resolve it.
Okay. And I think my next question is, do you have favorite brands to work with, or are there certain characteristics that you like to see when you come in?
It's a good question. I wouldn't say I prefer to work with a specific business, but I would say yes, of course, if the business has strong fundamentals in place and good team culture of actioning, I would say the most important trait for me would be brands who are willing to take action and change something, because I don't want to waste my energy, even though I get paid, right? But I'm not here to just make money. I'm also here to influence change. And if I come in and I see my consulting and my advice just go to waste, it's very discouraging for me, right? Because sometimes I empathize too much with businesses and I really want to help them move the needle. And when I see them fail and they don't take any action to fix that, even though the roadmap is very clear and sometimes it's non-negotiable, non-debatable, you have to do these things, right? Otherwise, you will end up here. And even though my job is not to judge, my job is to paint the alternatives, I still lean towards a specific direction that is more likely to result in a better outcome than any other ones. And that's why I take it very close to heart when businesses just brush it off. They pay me money, but don't actually do anything to fix it. So I would say, as long as the business listens to my expertise, my advice, it will be one of the key factors for me for a long-term relationship.
Okay. And before businesses listen to you, first off, they've got to hear about you and kind of what you offer. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of surprised. Like I've been in the space, running this agency for nearly 5 years. Been in the e-com space like before that. This feels very new, and it feels like there's not much info on this kind of online and just in the space in general. Why do you think that is?
You mean specifically the growth consulting with finance focus?
Yeah, focusing on ops and
Yeah.
instead of just spend more money on ads, right? That's the kind of ultimate.
Yeah. I would probably zoom in on two issues. One is the sensitivity to disclosing financial information, because it seems like there is a direct correlation between financial information and maybe not embarrassment, but maybe a good term would be um, I don't even know how to phrase that properly, but it seems like there is some sort of judgment expected when you say that you've mismanaged your business because it's subjective, right? You say, look, you have no cash in the bank account, which means you're doing something wrong, right? And that's subjective. Whereas marketing, there's a lot of room for speculation and subjectivity, right? Which is why so many founders are hesitant to open up their books and um, their life essentially and the way they do things in life to some random person. So it has to be a warm introduction with referrals, with a lot of case studies built up. Unless it's a very pressing issue, then they can rush into this cold relationship without knowing the person too well. But I would say that's the biggest roadblock that I've experienced as well. Because, for example, with marketers, you can post some visual online, and if that is aligned with the vision of the founder, that can attract the eyeballs, right? But the interpretation of financial data is very objective. And unless they know that you're one of the top experts in the space and that you can be trusted with their life, they will not reach out and they will not make that step. So I would say it's the biggest sort of roadblock. Even though a lot of founders know about finance, they know about the importance of back-end operations, they will still hesitate to open up their books. And the second thing I would say is because very few people do it in a holistic way. So I see a lot of finance people build a financial model that actually adds zero value, and then the founder or the operator on their end see that model and they wonder, what the hell am I paying thousands of dollars for? It's just useless piece of Google sheet that doesn't really make my business more profitable or data more actionable. And I think someone with an operator mindset who has experience managing marketing, managing operations, managing finance, who can come in and reconcile all of those functions in the business and provide holistic strategy that actually results in better financial outcomes and some sort of framework, operator framework, that will be much more preferred. And it will cost more money, of course, but it's more preferred. And that's why so many founders need to warm up to that idea before they can invest money.
Okay. And going forward, do you think the role of kind of what you do and marketing agencies, does that become more entwined?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's inevitable. We see huge restructuring in D2C space right now. A lot of email marketers as well are struggling. They have to be more of retention strategy partners rather than email marketers, right? It's such a commoditized offer to just do email marketing. You have to, look at retention holistically. Same goes for paid media agencies. Just a paid media agency alone is not really a long-term play. You have to be an acquisition partner, which means doing creative, doing a lot of, analytical stuff, and also understanding the back end, infrastructure. Because if you run ads, but it's not enough volume to cover OPEX, you may be a good agency killing it, right? But you need to do it at a larger volume. And if you're not familiar with the concepts, if you don't understand the back end, uh, the inventory levels, what you should be prioritizing as a focus in your campaigns, then you're generating some revenue, maybe profitably, but not that. But that doesn't result in better financial outcomes and more cash in the bank account for businesses. So I think this is an absolute inevitable step for businesses and I would say, agencies to evolve into. And to be honest with you, I have a couple of paid media agencies who have built partnerships with me directly to actually upskill and train them to become more financially savvy so that they can be better advisors, be better partners for their clients. And that's proven to be very successful. And I believe that you should be betting on agencies that are taking a step towards more integration with finance and operations.
Okay. And then just making this a bit personal, what's your background? How did you get into this space and get to where you are today?
Yeah, I come from very formal finance education analytics and started out in Ivy Business School in Canada. That's where I got my, holistic and diverse experience, because the first year of Ivy Business School is to learn about everything. So you come in and you learn about leadership, you learn about finance, you learn about data analytics, you learn about HR, human resources, you learn about marketing, you learn about operations, and you actually learn about that in a lot of detail using real case studies. And the second year, you can dive into the specific function. And I chose to pursue finance and analytics. And after that, I wanted to go into corporate work at a hedge fund or investment bank. And tried an internship, didn't really enjoy the lifestyle and the political games that happened, and decided to jump into the trenches of small businesses. That's what I call it. And join a small business out of London, Ontario that had wholesale operation, no understanding of finance and operations and cash flow management. And they had huge aspirations to go online in the United States and expand and push forward. And my friend on the growth marketing side, I was on the finance ops side, came in, joined the business, had a bit of stake in the business as well, just to incentivize us to work harder. And we basically turned the business from 1.5 million Canadian dollars to 10 million altogether in 2.5 years, roughly. And 30% of that came from online in the United States. So we built it from scratch up to 3 million in 2.5 years. And that was a massive success. I realized that I was pretty good at operations and finance, wanted to continue learning about marketing, didn't really see any more potential in the business, exited it, and decided to travel the world. Started doing more consulting projects remotely from Thailand. During COVID, got stuck in Thailand for about 6 months, then traveled the world a bit, and then decided to come back to Thailand, settle down here. But ever since, I've been doing consulting projects and growth consulting with finance for D2C brands and omnichannel businesses too. So it doesn't have to be D2C alone. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Okay. And you mentioned it there, kind of how you work with people is consulting.
Mm-hmm.
How do brands work with you, and how do they get the best results?
Yeah, so there's 3 engagement models typically. The first one is an ongoing relationship. If they just need finance advisory to come in and, give them the basics of finance management, cash flow management, P&L, interpretation, data, reconciliation, all that stuff. And just a once a month check in to make sure they're moving in the right direction, not very integrated. So that would be the first engagement. The second engagement is the growth consulting, where I basically do a project. We identify the bottlenecks in the business, and I lay out the roadmap for them. They fix the issues, and then we can regroup again at some point in 3 months, or we can continue an ongoing relationship after that consulting project as a fractional CFO, just to make sure everything is moving in the right direction. And the third engagement is just basic coaching. I can just coach an operator, a founder, a business owner, or a finance person inside the company to be a better operator with more focus on the D2C specific finance management, and helping them understand how to action that data and give actionable insights. So that would be the 3 typical business models.
Okay. And something I've learned, or not learned, as I've tried to grow the business, is you often don't know what you don't know, right? So finance ops could be a blind spot for someone. They don't know they've got a problem. Are there any kind of symptoms or things that they should look out for to know that they need to work with you?
Yeah, I would say if you always feel pressure with your bank account. I know it's counterintuitive. You got to invest before you can find the issues, right? But if you're always running and you're feeling this pressure, like someone breathing down your neck that you don't have enough cash in the bank, you should probably speak to me. I will at least give you some, complimentary advice on what you should prioritize very quickly. But again, the first symptom is first purchase profitability, right? If you're not first order profitable, figure out when exactly you turn profitable, because that's your cash conversion cycle, part of your cash conversion cycle. If you have to wait 6 months before you turn profitable with your average customer from a specific cohort, you have to finance that loss somehow. If you don't have enough repeat customers coming down the pipeline to compensate for the loss, you are not financing your business internally. You have to borrow money at some point, either from investors or creditors, right? Raise money from investors or borrow money from creditors. So that's essentially the biggest sort of health check. So look at your first purchase profitability and follow the path from there. And I would also say that, yeah, if you're doing well on the profit side, on the cash side, but you're looking to make further strategic investments, you can also speak to me, because I will help you maximize the return on investment in the shortest period of time.
Okay. Switching gears slightly, I know you're a numbers guy, but you've also written a book. Can you just talk to us about that?
Sorry, which book?
You've written multiple books.
Talk me through it. Let's see what the streets say.
Is there not a sci-fi mystery thriller?
Right, yes. Very interesting. Okay. I thought you meant some sort of finance book, which I never wrote.
You haven't? Okay.
But on the sci-fi side, yes, I did write a sci-fi book during COVID because I had some free time to work on it. And yeah, it's actually one passion of mine. And I think it's a life project of mine to build some sort of Game of Thrones, Star Wars franchise. And that sci-fi thriller was the first experiment for me. It didn't, turn out too well, but it gave me a lot of, background and a lot of skills and learnings that I took away from it. And I think I will come back stronger with the new iteration for that story. But yeah, it's an interesting story about knowledge, actually, and how knowledge becomes the key currency in a new world, and how it forms the new society and the way those societies interact with each other based on how they see knowledge and how they use knowledge. So that's the story.
And will you merchandise that with film or TV, or is it going to be a D2C eCom brand?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it will be everything.
Okay.
At some point. Yeah, so we'll have the merchandise sold through D2C. We'll have the books sold through D2C. Yeah, I tried D2C for books, but apparently customer acquisition costs were insane. So unless you have a series of like 8 or 9 books, you shouldn't run ads.
You need the upsells, right?
Yeah.
No, for sure. And I know you're also, focused on being a nomad and kind of living outside where you went to university and kind of grew up and stuff. Can you just talk to me about your thoughts there, and also being a solopreneur?
In what sense? Because there's so many different angles I could take.
In terms of just that lifestyle decision, you mentioned your background of the corporate world, trying it in the internship and then working in-house. Why did you make that decision to leave and kind of do your own thing? And then how has that evolved?
Well, yeah, what started out as a belief that you can build professional life remotely turned into reality, because at first I couldn't believe it. I left as I wanted to travel Southeast Asia, and just left it with $11,000 in my savings, which would last like 3 or 4 months pretty much, right? And I also had a car loan and a car parked in Canada when I left, and I abandoned my apartment. I abandoned my family, essentially. Everything was left in Canada, and it was a huge risk to take, to be honest. But then again, I just felt like I am the world person, like a worldwide person. I don't want to be stuck within the realm of one country. It's my personal choice. my personal belief. I respect people who, get a mortgage, settle down, build a family in one place. Absolutely respect that. Nothing wrong with that. But for me, I love to live a dynamic life across different countries, continents. I'm a multicultural person. I was raised in Russia. I was born in Ukraine. I immigrated to Canada. So you can imagine how much movement I had as a youngster, and it was important for me to maintain that lifestyle. And I felt like when I lived in Canada for 7 years, I felt like I was getting stuck, and I needed to move. And yeah, and it just felt natural for me to find a way to make it work. And as I said, it was quite a challenge with some bumpy rides, working remotely for one employer before doing more consulting and then finding more clients. But yeah, it's sort of a fundamental principle of my life.
Okay. And is this like, will you continue to be based in Thailand, or do you want to keep kind of moving around? What's the plan for the future?
For the foreseeable future, Thailand, yes, I see a lot of investment and a lot of capital flowing into Thailand. I see a lot of the infrastructure is absolutely amazing here in Bangkok. Like if you come here, you will find one of the best cities in the world potentially. Just on the diversity side, there's so much to do here, so much to unpack, so many cool people coming in, so many interesting projects. And again, I live right at the center of Bangkok. I walk outside. I live near the park, Lumpini Park. You can look it up. And I walk outside and I see tons of construction going on. Right, there is a lot of investment, a lot of betting, and I don't see that as much in Europe, for example. The economy is not booming in Europe. I don't see that much in Canada because of social issues, because of their decision to decrease their gas production, right? Which was a big mistake for them, which has inhibited growth. And Canada is now projected to be one of the slowest growing, if not the slowest growing countries out of the developed countries. And it's a big issue. And yeah, it's just overall just a better lifestyle here in Asia. And of course, I could see myself relocating to Singapore, for example, in the next couple of years, potentially considering the US. But again, just because of my principles, I would not live in the US at all times, right? It would be like 3 months a year in the United States, and then Asia 6 months a year, maybe 3 months in Europe, but not really living. But you know what I mean. Not really settling down, but just enjoying Europe.
Yeah. I think there's different things you can take from different places, right? And it sounds like Asia, there's a lot of growth, but maybe lifestyle relaxation could be better in Europe, right? And I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
semi-nomadic existence is
Exactly.
interesting as well. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
go on.
Oh no, no, I just said exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
totally agree with you.
cool. I think just to kind of round things off then, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I feel like this is a new topic that not a lot of people are kind of clued up about. So what kind of sector and size businesses should reach out to you, and how can they get in contact?
I would recommend checking out my LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on these very topics. And before you even reach out to me, you can scroll through all that content, see the type of thinking that I have, and then see if that aligns with your thinking. And then we can have a conversation. Again, I offer a complimentary consulting call for 30 minutes. We can just jump and chat about your challenges. And if I see that I could help you further, I can propose some sort of engagement moving forward. But again, I'm always open to helping businesses out without any sort of engagement whatsoever. So drop me a DM on LinkedIn and I will arrange some sort of follow up with you.
Cool. Okay, I will put the link in the description. Now,
Sounds
Valentin,
good.
it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Final question that I ask everyone is, do you recommend anyone else that you think would be a good podcast guest to have on here?
Absolutely. I would recommend a few people actually. I would recommend Nathan from Blue Sense Digital. They're paid media out of Australia, and they have the lowest churn rate out of all paid media agencies I've ever heard. I think theirs is less than 1%. I think they've only churned like one or two clients ever in their history. So
Right in the space.
yeah, they know what they're doing. So have Nathan, absolutely. I would also recommend Chris Daly. I don't know if you know Chris Daly. He's a retail mastermind, database marketer. So he comes from very extensive background in database marketing, and old retail school, but he's also turning some of the playbook into D2C context. And I love seeing that. I think he's a very smart and intelligent person, and you would enjoy having a conversation with him. And I would also recommend, I don't know how far you want to take it away from D2C, but maybe you having someone like Ryan Ridgway on your pod. Ryan Ridgway, he is a founder of Cirrus Capital. So they actually do debt advisory and debt restructuring for a lot of businesses. So if that's helpful for your audience and for your clients as well, I would encourage you having a chat with him because he's a very smart guy and has a lot of insights in the e-commerce landscape. So those would be my 3 picks.
No, for sure. I think like looking at financing options and how to structure that is definitely very interesting. So thank you.
Cool.
But yeah, Valentin, thanks again. I will, as I said, post the links in the description. And thanks again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Jordan. Cheers.